Hey guys, welcome back to Homestuck. No, I'm just kidding. Welcome to AnimezRUs, episode 4 of Haven by Blood, chapter 8. The building looked extremely out of place in the decrepit city. It was white, fairly clean, and had light streaming from all the windows, making the small light bulb string at the bunker seem pathetic. At the front were double doors, propped open. Inside, John could see a lobby, with an assortment of ragged people sitting around various expensive-looking pieces of furniture. This was the most amount of trolls John had ever seen gathered in one place. He had never felt more exposed with his still pale skin. Most of the trolls present looked like they basically lived on the streets, with grimy, ripped clothing and matted hair. In fact, the only person who wasn't in contrast with the stark cleanliness of the mansion was a teenage boy in kind of ridiculous-looking striped pants sitting alone on one of the sofas. He raised his head when Carcat and John entered, his yellow eyes framed by large glasses. John wondered if trolls even needed glasses after their eyes changed. Surely having weird, glow-in-the-dark yellow eyes would correct the nearsighted thing. At least he hoped it would cure his eyes. The striped pants guy nodded to Carcat, who in return waved his hand in greeting. "That's Aridin," Carcat muttered out of the side of his mouth as they passed. "He's okay, but Solix and him have some sort of bullshit rival thing going. I try not to get involved." They passed several closed doors, which Carcat informed John were food storage, then up a large maroon staircase. At the top were another set of double doors, which Carcat pushed open. There were in a hallway, with open doorways on either side of them. They peeked into one of the rooms and saw the back of someone's head, who was sitting on a couch. "Pfeffery?" Carcat said, and the head turned. It was a girl, with huge wavy hair, pushed back by pink goggles on her forehead. As soon as she saw them, she smiled, showing all 20 or so pointed teeth. "Hey, I was just talking to Solix here. Who's the new guy?" John's first impression was that she talked in a way that you could almost hear smiley emotions in her voice. Emoticons, sorry. "This is John. John, meet Pfeffery." Pfeffery waved and grinned again. They entered the room and saw Solix sitting on the other side of the couch, looking a bit disgruntled. He wasn't wearing his usual heterochromatic glasses, which he seemed to never take off. When he looked up, John was startled to see that he didn't have any whites of his eyes, or irises, or even pupils. One eye was red, the other blue, both completely filled in. Solix caught John staring and picked up his glasses off the side of the sofa and shoved them on his face, muttering that yes, he knew he had weird eyes. "Yeah, I just brought him down to show him around. And this is kind of the place to be, you know," Carcat was saying to Pfeffery. "So what's Captor doing here?" "Zahak won't see me," Solix answered for himself. "Says the deal's off. And I was in the neighborhood, so why not?" "Yeah, well, I'm glad you stopped by. You know, if you guys ever need anything, just ask, okay? And come here more often. It gets lonely with just Aridin sticking around." "You two doing okay?" Carcat asked. Pfeffery shrugged. "As much as usual." "Sorry to be rude, guests, but we need to head out," Carcat said. "We have a bit of a situation to take care of back home." "Yeah, no problem," she replied. "Good to meet you, though," she added to John, who smiled back. Carcat led John back out the room and down the hallway, Solix jogging to keep up a few seconds later. What do you mean, a situation back home? Solix asked as they descended the staircase. Tavros has Mind Fang on his ass. It turns out that's who pushed him in the first place. Shit, this is serious. Yeah, so I told him he could stay over for a while. Try to stay inconspicuous. You what? Solix said loudly in the middle of the lobby. Several people looked up. He rolled his eyes and grabbed Karkat's arm, pulling him out quickly. Are you an idiot, KK? If Mind Fang is on his tail is gonna lead her right to us. Wow, great plan you have there. Get us all killed instead. Karkat was looking extremely regretful. Fuck. Shit. Sorry. I should have told him to go somewhere else, somewhere hidden. Yeah, you know, for a total asshole, sometimes you're a little too nice. The two were silent for the rest of the way back to the bunker. They crossed Main Street the same way as before, a frightened sprint, and then Karkat led them back through the maze of streets to the old clothing store. Home sweet home, Solix muttered, staring at the creepy array of mannequins scattered around the room. Karkat lifted the trapdoor. He invited John to jump first, which he did. A whoosh of air later, he was crouched on the tunnel floor, but something was slightly different. Guys, the door is open. There were two thumps behind him as Karkat and Solix landed. It's probably just Nitram being an idiot and leaving it open, Karkat said. Him and Solix stepped in front of John towards the door. It smells like... Solix started, then abruptly stopped. Oh no. Oh shit, no. Karkat gave a startled gasp, and John moved between them. His stomach flipped. It was Tavros, lying directly behind the entranceway. His legs were askew, broken, small gears and shards of metal laying scattered around. His eyes were open, lips slightly parted, and a giant hole in his chest. Out of it oozed brown goo, which gathered around him like a grotesque brown pool. John felt nauseous. He had never seen a dead body in his life, let alone one this mangled. He glanced around from it, trying to regain his senses, but what met his eyes didn't help in the slightest. The bunker was mangled. The furniture was knocked over, the cupboards open, and contents scattered everywhere. Worse, the walls and floor were splattered with brown goo, as if a horde of children had decided to go finger painting with some sort of troll blood. There were handprints, smears, even bizarre smiley faces with 8 eyes. Karkat looked up and groaned, staggering back, banging into the wall of the tunnel and sliding down into a sitting position. John sat across from him, and Solix next to John. They sat without speaking or looking at each other for several minutes. Finally, John managed to regain use of his vocal cords, and said creakily, "We're fucked, aren't we?" Karkat groaned, bringing his face to his knees. "Yeah, we're fucked." Chapter 9. Kanaya was gone. When the boys finally stood up, John feeling rather weak-kneed, they searched the bunker, and Solix went to check Kanaya's house. She wasn't there, and there wasn't any of her blood, which Karkat said was a dark green color. That was all he said the rest of the day, repeating it a few times, saying if she was dead, there would be blood. And then came the task of cleaning. Karkat had covered Tavros in one of the old blanket sheets, and then sort of rolled him up as best they could. A few gears and chips of metal remained on the ground, which John gathered and disposed of. Solix hoisted the misshapen bundle over his back as Karkat went to get a few shovels from the other room. John felt like he was in a trance, slowly growing through the motions as he accepted a shovel from Karkat and followed the other two out the front door. He had never expected to hand-bury anyone in his life, let alone before he got out of middle school. "Careful," Karkat hissed as Solix clambered out unsteadily out of the trapdoor. The body swinging precariously, and a drop of something wet landed on John's face. He cringed. They exited the clothing store and turned right, walking the perimeter to the back. He had never been this way. It was a short walk, barely 5 minutes, before they reached what probably used to be a very small park or garden. Now, however, it was just a large rectangle of dirt, about the size of a house. The top right corner, several large stones were laid on the ground. John supposed they were stand-in for grave markers. Karkat led him over and pointed to 5 stones laying in several feet apart in a row. "That's Cankri, the white stone, and Latuna and Mutuna next to him. They lived in the bunker before us, and that's Poria. She lived in the candy shop before Kanaya." He didn't sound sad, exactly, mostly just tired. John didn't ask who the 5th grave was. He could see next to it laying several wilted flowers. Besides, Solix was right behind him, and John didn't know if mentioning her audio would bother him. Tavros's body was laid next to them, still wrapped in the sheet, which was now speckled with brown. They put their shovels in the ground a few feet from the edge of Aradia's grave and began to dig. They were barely a foot into the ground when John's shoulders started to ache. The shovel seemed to get heavier and heavier each time he lifted it. Karkat and Solix didn't seem to notice, though. They both moved quickly and efficiently, clearly used to the act of grave digging. By the time they were finished, they stood in a good-sized hole, and John's arms were about to fall off. He was sweaty, covered in dirt, and generally uncomfortable. Karkat scrambled out of the hole and picked up the body, heaving it in. Neither John nor Solix were prepared. The body landed on their heads and then rolled to the side. One of Tavros's metal legs came off with a crunching sound as he hit the ground. Karkat made a strangled noise in his throat, but didn't curse at them, which was unnatural. John, who had jumped backwards when it hit him, was fighting the stranger to laugh. If it was anything else that would have fallen on their heads like that, it would have been hilarious, but at the moment, he felt they were the completely wrong people to be burying anyone. Solix had reached out and straightened the body, then pulled the stained sheet off where it had slipped. Pulled the stained sheet back where it had slipped off. John picked up the half leg and tried feebly to reattach it, then just jammed it next to the other one. Solix and John climbed out of the hole, all 3 of them picking up their shovels again. It was far easier putting the dirt back in the ground. They finished quickly, but the stars had begun to fade by the time they patted the mound of dirt flat. Karkat quickly found a large misshapen stone, which they placed at the head of the grave. Then all 3 of them paused. "Do we say anything?" John asked tentatively. The first time any of them had spoke in hours. "What's the point?" Karkat answered. "I mean, he's dead. His family doesn't give two shits about him anymore. If they did, I'm pretty sure no one would want us three to fuck up this burial more than we already have. And with that, the three of them turned away from the graveyard. They walked slowly until Solix suddenly hissed. A second later, Karkat winced as well. John turned around. He felt fine, but both the other trolls were suddenly bent over, heads down. John suddenly looked up and saw the sun had come up while they were walking home. He ran behind Solix and Karkat and shoved them forward, yelling, "Hurry up, go." They stumbled and ran, half limping and clearly in pain. They collapsed the minute they entered the doors of the clothing store and out of the sun. John entered a few seconds later. "Is it that bad?" he asked the other two, who were both curled up on the ground. Karkat flipped him off. "We need to stop doing that," Solix said through clenched teeth. "Yeah," said Karkat, slowly moving to his feet. He turned and John could see red patches covering the back of his neck and arms. Solix was covered in similar patches, though he had more yellowish tinge. They dropped down the trapdoor and down the hallway to where the door was still open. All three of them groaned, having forgot about the massive amounts of blood that was covering nearly every surface. By the time the bunker was clean, or at least blood-free, John's eyes were drooping. Karkat and Solix were sprawled across the sofas, holding water-soaked rags to their irritated skin. John trapezed to the other room and into the tiny bathroom and turned on the shower. He had already been warned that the bunker didn't have hot water, but at this point he was too filthy to care. The cold water still came as a shock, however. John was uncomfortably wide awake by the time he pulled some borrowed clothes on, rinsing his dirt-covered ones in the tub. Re-emerging into the main room, he made a beeline for the leftmost bottom bunk and crawled under the covers. The day had been long and extremely strange, but John was a little freaked out about how calm he felt about everything at the moment. It was strange how quickly one could adjust, he thought. He had just spent the evening burying someone who he had met the same afternoon, but he wasn't panicking. Should he be? John rolled over to face the wall, one which still had faint brown smears. Solix and Karkat were complaining quietly behind him. At least for the moment, John put everything that had happened behind him and fell asleep. Well, that was kind of depressing. I hope you guys enjoyed the Tavros slaughter, and that is... let's not spoil it. I hope you guys enjoy, and if you did, please like and subscribe so you can get the next episode coming up real soon. Bye, guys.